Good evening. I'm Mike Beam. I'm the Director of Planning and Engineering for the South Dakota Department of Transportation. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thanks for those of you that are on Zoom and Facebook Live. The purpose of our meetings here tonight are to really help us to improve the transportation system across South Dakota. And we do that through various listening sessions, whether it's customer engagement, customer surveys, but these meetings are vitally important for us. Transportation is something that all of us are actually very passionate about at the DOT. We love it. So you got the best people in the world to talk to about roads and bridges if you want to tonight. Well, the best people in the world, in my opinion, anyway. But we love transportation and we are very, very passionate about it. And as you think about transportation, just how important it is to our daily lives, everything that's in this room right now has been brought by transportation. And it's one of those fundamental things that we probably take for granted most of the time. The fact whether or not you're hauling your grain from the field to the elevator, or maybe you're ordering something on Amazon Prime Day is coming up, but you get that product within a very short period of time. And it's our transportation system that makes that efficient and effective for us. So thank you for being engaged tonight, and we'll be taking an opportunity for some questions and try to answer them later on, but we have a presentation to go through. Before we get into that, I did want to recognize Representative Carl Perry from District 3. Thank you for coming out. Yes, sir. Thank you. We have several folks from the DOT around here tonight as well. Secretary Joel Junt in the front, he's wearing the red shirt. He's not the target tonight, but he is wearing the red shirt. So if you want to talk with Joel later on, he'll be here as well. Mark Leiferman to my left over here, he works really hard to help develop this transportation program or the STIP. This is Levi Briggs. He's the man in charge. He helps develop the program itself and spends a lot of time and effort and dedicated time towards making sure that our transportation system and our projects work. Mark Peterson here from the Aberdeen region is here as well. We have Matt Bry, Bruce Schroeder, and who am I missing? Brad Letcher there in the back, and Mark will get into that a little bit. These folks really know the projects in and around their area. So if you get a chance later on, you have a specific question about a particular section of highway, a great resource. They know those roads like the back of their hands. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We are recording the presentation tonight, and as we get through the presentation and start doing some public testimony, there'll be a microphone. We'll get into that here in just a few minutes. This is the second of 4 public meetings that we hold throughout the state. The recording should be up online, hopefully here this week. So if you want to go back and listen to it, or listen to the one that we had last week in Pierre, you can go ahead and do that. Just log on to our website, and you can go ahead and log on and listen to the other public meetings. Just wanted to talk a little bit about transportation and how important transportation is, but we all kind of gone through that a little bit. But really, when you think about transportation and any sort of asset, it requires funding. And when we think about funding, transportation system is really funded through our federal highway program. So the federal bill that we have, which is called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, was passed here last November. Most of you probably heard about this, a relatively large bill, but for the DOT, on average, we spend about 75% of our construction funds being federal aid. So having a federal bill like the IIJA or BIL isn't really anything new for us. That's how we funded transportation across South Dakota for years and decades. One good thing about the bill, or the BIL that came out, is we have a 5-year plan or 5-year investment strategy that came through that bill. About $350 billion nationally is going to help improve transportation across our nation. For South Dakota alone, we're going to see around $380 million a year, again, to help improve transportation systems across South Dakota. I mentioned that our federal funds pay for about 75% of the construction projects we have in our state. The remaining 25% is comprised of fuel tax and excise tax. When you will purchase a vehicle, go get it registered. That helps to go back into the coffers to help build and maintain transportation systems in South Dakota. So using those two mechanisms, it helps us to really invest in the future and invest in the transportation system in South Dakota. As we look at that investment strategy, we need to think about what's most important. And number one for us is we're going to focus on safety. The graph you see up there right now on the top, it's actually showing the number of serious injury crashes we've had in South Dakota since 2008. And that's a pretty great line to see if you're somebody like us in the transportation realm, or really anybody. Nobody wants to be in a serious crash or have a family member or someone that they know or care about in a serious crash. And those numbers have been trending downwards. You can see on the graph, in 2021, we had about 495 serious injury crashes in South Dakota. Our goal by 2023 is 400, driving towards zero. On the bottom line, those are fatal crashes. You can see in 2020 and 2021, we saw a pretty good significant uptick. In 2019, we had one of our lowest on records with 102 fatal crashes. In 2020, 141. In 2021, 148. Unfortunately, those trends we saw nationally as well. Any life and every life is precious. So we're driving that towards zero, towards death, towards zero death initiative. Obviously, if any of us were asked, how many deaths are enough in South, or how many deaths are too many in South Dakota, or how many are enough, what's acceptable, I hope we'd all say zero. So we're driving towards that goal of zero fatalities and zero deaths. What I can tell you right now, so far in 2022, we've seen about a 30% reduction from what we saw last year. So we are seeing a downward trend so far this year. We're very hopeful that continues. Just last couple of weeks, I know we had several fatal crashes across the state of South Dakota. Unfortunately, those are cross center line crashes and run off the road crashes. And I'll get into some of the ways we're trying to mitigate some of those crashes that are occurring out there in just a few minutes. As we look at safety projects, we need to be thinking about what is a safety project. And a lot of the safety projects we do really aren't intended to be a transportation asset or pavement. We're looking at different features and different ways to help ensure that that driver behavior, which is one of the leading causes of crashes, we're helping to curb that driver behavior that crosses the center line or goes off the road. So some of the innovative things that we've been working towards are center line rumble strips. Those, of course, are in the center of the roadway. The numbers on our center line crashes have actually, where we did the installation of these center line rumble strips, have resulted in about a 62% reduction in fatal and serious injury crashes for those head-ons. Our side swipes are down 47%. Again, this is a feature in the roadway trying to help with that driver behavior, keeping that driver in their lane. You can see on the upper right-hand side, that's a high friction surface treatment. In areas of South Dakota where we have a high number of injury crashes during winter events, we're looking to deploy this technology. The technology is expensive, but the results have been unbelievable. You take a look in the very top graph, 80% reduction of those serious injury crashes during those winter-related activities. What we're doing is we're putting down essentially a glue and epoxy that's in the lower right-hand corner, and we're using a very hard rock to go back on top that doesn't polish, so that when those drivers are trying to negotiate those curves during those winter events, they have better friction and they can make it through those curves or make that stop that they're intending to do. Lower left-hand corner, are shoulder rumble strips. And I think we've all experienced our shoulder rumble strips and likely our center line rumble strips. The number one fatal crash in South Dakota is a single vehicle runoff roadway crash. What we found with the installation, after the installation of the shoulder rumble strips, it's reduced that by 20%. Again, keeping those drivers on the road in their lane and getting them home safe every day. Of course, a safe system is great, but it needs to be reliable. I travel a lot throughout South Dakota, like I'm sure many of you do. I spend a lot of time in the car helping to fund the transportation system through that fuel tax. But as I travel across the state, like many of you, you probably don't measure distance in actual distance, you measure it in time. That's how we measure things at our house. And when we're going somewhere, all right, we need to go to Aberdeen, we need to go to Sioux Falls, Rapid City. How far is it? Oh, it's about 2.5 hours. It's 3 hours, 2 hours and 42 minutes. That's a reliable transportation system. As we see more traffic throughout our state, especially in our metro areas, we're deploying new innovations like in the upper left-hand corner, which is diverging diamond interchange. For those of you that have been to 41st Street and I-29 in Sioux Falls, you understand that making that left turn off those ramps can be very difficult at times. This is a new technology that we have. Our first one actually is going into Rapid City La Crosse Street right now, but allows that left turn maneuver to happen easier. It's going to help reduce congestion. It's also going to help reduce crashes that are occurring there. If you don't have the 511 app, that's the one in the middle. I highly suggest you get it. Again, as you think about transportation reliability, it's about expectations and ensuring that you know how long it's going to or you have a good indication how long it's going to take you to get from point A to point B. Our 511 app has been really just a hit. It allows people to plan out their trips, see what the weather conditions are, take a look at the actual video or pictures out there, what the conditions look like at that point in time. It's all intended to provide that reliable transportation system, put the tools in the hands of the users and the customers, again, to ensure that they can get from point A to point B when they need to and plan for that trip. In our upper right-hand corner, you've probably seen our boards, our message boards that are up there. If you haven't, our Think Thursday messages, although a little cute, they're intended to get your attention. They're intended to help focus on that driver behavior and that driver safety component, again, of what is really a fundamental area of safety overall. It's that behavior element. Our DMS boards also can warn us of closures or crashes or things of that nature. Again, putting the tools in the hands of the driver so that it's a reliable transportation system. The driver can expect and plan for it. The lower left-hand corner, congestion, something we don't have a lot of in South Dakota, but we do have some of it. Really, our tolerance for congestion is significantly less than what you see in our metro areas, and that's expected. We're deploying things like a super tube, which is a passing lane opportunity in a rural section, a 2-lane section. So drivers know when that passing opportunity is coming up. They can plan for it. Next passing opportunity is in 2, 3, 6 miles. Again, looking at areas where we're seeing a little bit more congestion and helping that driver behavior and that reliability to ensure that folks can get where they want to go. The lower right-hand corner, again, that's our La Crosse Street interchange, our very first diverging diamond interchange. Our goal is to have that open yet here this year. It's going to be one of the first we'll see here in South Dakota. We've done some other things, such as signal timing and some other ways to help improve reliability. But as we look at ways to improve the transportation system and reliability, we're trying to find new ways and trying to find better ways to deliver that to our customers. Of course, you can have a safe and reliable transportation system, but if you don't have physical assets, it doesn't get you anywhere. So I love this picture. Those are actually all the structures in South Dakota, over 5,700 bridges in South Dakota. And you can actually see the streams and the tributaries that tie into it. It's a relatively and really large number of structures that we have in South Dakota, especially considering our population. Population density is low, yet a high number of structures. We're focusing on different ways to help improve our transportation system, whether it's working with our local governments in the Bridge Improvement Grant Program. There's some great information in the back table there. Also a local federal bridge program, because we understand and we acknowledge that all transportation systems are interconnected. It doesn't do us any good, again, to grow that grain in the back 40 if you can't get it to market. So township roads, the county roads, the state highway system, the interstate are all critically important to ensure that connected transportation system. So again, working with our local governments, where we have several projects and maybe hit on a few of them here tonight, on our local government's system to help replace some of the structures that are old and in need of repair. Focusing more on the state highway system, this graph just kind of helps you give an indication of what are the ages of our structures. Through techniques like preservation of our decks and other techniques to preserve the integrity of those structures, we've got some really good life out of our bridges. Generally, you could anticipate 50 to 75 years when those bridges were originally constructed for how long they'd last. It's like any asset. You can do a very good job of maintaining it, but at some point in time being used, it needs to be replaced. We have a large number of structures in that 40 to 70 year age, which coincides very well with the build of the interstate system, along with the builds of the federal highway bills. So as you can see, we got a lot of work ahead of us, but in the same sense, we're maintaining those state structures in relatively good condition. Over 95% of our bridges are in good to fair condition, which is a great number for us to have. We're seeing this wave coming and we're trying to plan for it. So we're going to see a lot of structures coming up in the next few years for replacement across South Dakota. As we look to replace those, we want to make sure they last for generations. So in the upper left-hand corner, you can actually see rock, riprap. Well, we have flood events, and I think 2019 is a pretty darn good example of it. Had a good chance to visit with a friend from Edmonds County here earlier about some flooding issues they have too. So as we look to rebuild structures, now we're shooting for 75 to 100 years on those structures. So we know that events can and will happen. So what can we do to help prevent that bridge from going out? Instead, maybe the roadway gets washed out. A little section of roadway is a lot cheaper than a bridge. So we're working on things trying to prevent bridges from actually going out and improving the resiliency of our transportation system. The upper right-hand corner, that's actually one of our drones, our unmanned aerial systems. Those are being used now. Today, they've been deployed for bridge inspections. It makes us really more efficient, provides us better quality data. And at the end of the day, it doesn't put our folks up in harm's way near as often. Been a great opportunity to deploy technology, again, trying to serve our customers, give that best transportation system we possibly can. Lower right-hand corner, that's actually just steel, right? So as we look at reinforcement that we have in our concrete and actually in our bridge decks, we've made a transition. We're transitioning from epoxy coated, which is just a coated steel, to the stainless steel. And the reason for that, of course, we got 2 seasons. We got construction season, then we have winter, and we see a lot of salts going down. So as the salts go down, what happens with steel? It corrodes, right? We start seeing issues, decks start going. So we're deploying a new technology for South Dakota of using stainless steel reinforcement in our bridge decks. We're showing that we should be able to save about 20% life cycle cost in that bridge over time by shifting over. Higher initial cost, but better value at the end of the day. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about pavements a little bit. So obviously all of us drove on a road, not just bridges, contrary to where a bridge engineer would like to think. But our pavements in South Dakota were in a pretty good position as well. The blue on top indicates the excellent, green, good, yellow, fair, and the red is poor. Our target level is to have 80% of our pavements in good to excellent condition. That is actually the highest return on investment we can have. And it's good to have some pavements in poor condition because like any asset, some things just need to be rebuilt, totally torn out, replaced. So as we look at our pavements, we anticipate being able to maintain our pavements in that good to excellent 80% target level in the next 6, 8, 10 years, which is a great thing for us to be able to do and be able to maintain that into the future. But that doesn't mean that we aren't looking at innovation and better ways to do things. The upper left-hand corner, that's actually our intelligent compaction. So for what that means, it really helps us with thermal imagery, the roller patterns and things that happen after the placement of the asphalt, trying to get the density back on that pavement. Again, we know that if we can get a better density over time, we can have a better product overall at the end, longer life. Upper right-hand corner, or excuse me, left-hand corner, trying to find a way to tie our pavements together. That's a notch wedge joint. Again, trying to find ways to get better every day. Lower right-hand corner, that's our next generation concrete pavement. One of the innovations we deployed here in Sioux Falls a couple of years ago. Great opportunity for us to look at accelerating construction, also giving that long-term ride and durability from a pavement standpoint. So we're constantly looking at ways to help improve the transportation system across South Dakota. I'm going to turn it over to Mark here for a little bit. He'll talk just about some project coming up in and around the region, and I'll come back towards the end. So Mark.
Thanks, Mike. I am Mark Peterson, Aberdeen Region Engineer, and I have Matt Bry, Watertown Area Engineer, and Bruce Schroeder, who's the Aberdeen Area Engineer, and Brad Letcher, who's the Huron Area Engineer here tonight. Those are three of my team that handle things in the area office and handle the construction. I'm going to be doing a very high level overview of the construction projects we have coming up for the next 4 years. If you have some questions on some individual projects, I would save them till the end. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A, and we'll have plenty of people willing to answer your questions. So I'm going to start off in 2023 for the Aberdeen region. We're going to have 9 resurfacing and surfacing projects across the region. We'll be resurfacing 106 miles of roadway, and it'll cost about $50 million. As you can see, they're kind of scattered throughout the region, different projects. For the grading program, we have 3 different projects. Highway 15 south of Millbank, we'll be finishing that up, and then Highway 25 north of DeSmit, and then we'll be working on Highway 14 down by Arlington. It's about 19 miles of roadway. It'll cost about $33 million. And when we do reconstruction, we're going to go out, we're going to widen that road grade out, add shoulders to the roadway, replace the pipes if need be, any of the structures, and totally regrade that section and start over. Some of the spotlight projects for 2023, some of the interesting jobs and hopefully some high impact ones we're going to have is we're going to be installing a variable speed limit on I-29 from Brookings to Flandreau. This will be the second of the variable speed limits in the state, correct, Mike? Kind of a trial run for us. Some other states have had really good success, up to 50% reduction in severe accidents during winter weather, utilizing this technology. We're also looking at putting a adaptive signal system through the downtown corridor here in Aberdeen. Anybody that drives Aberdeen and knows when a train goes through town, it backs up traffic for about 10 blocks. What this system will do, it has camera vehicle detection, and it can adjust the signal timings on the fly to hopefully clear that queue backlog of cars out as it goes. When we look at it, it'll probably be late 2023 before we get into that. I know we're working with the city of Aberdeen. They're looking at maybe a transition on Main Street. We're doing a little study on right now with them. And then also we're going to replace all the DMS boards on the interstate, upgrade to a color DMS board, be a lot more visible in poor weather so we can get messages out that way in addition to the 511 system. In 2024, we have a lot of surfacing and resurfacing in the region, 16 different projects, and we'll be touching 153 miles. We'll be resurfacing those roadways for about $81 million. In the grading and reconstruction program, we actually have 7 different projects. It's going to be a big year of grading for the Aberdeen region. It'll cover 52 miles and about $85 million. 2 of those projects I'll talk about here. The Through Fort Thompson, we're going to be doing an urban reconstruction. It's about $11 million worth of work. That'll include ADA work, pedestrian pathway, overhead lighting, and drainage enhancements. And then also on Highway 37 in Huron, we will be reconstructing the downtown corridor. And we'll be about half of that will be a transition from a 4 to a 3 lane. We're partnering with the city to try to help a little bit with some revitalization efforts down there. And the rest of it will be a replacement in like and kind, along with storm sewer, ADA work, pathways, and the like. In 2025, we have 10 surfacing projects in the region. We're going to cover 140 miles of roadway, and it'll amount to about $72 million worth of work. And then on the grading, we have four new projects in 2025, where we're going to reconstruct 28 miles of roadway for about $50 million. One of our biggest jobs that year is going to be the Highway 28 reconstruction from Esteline over to South Dakota Highway 15. And we're also going to replace the bridge over the Big Sioux River just west of Esteline. And that'll be about $13 million worth of work there. And in 2026, another big year for resurfacing. We have 13 different projects that'll cover 149 miles in the region and about $97 million worth of work. And on the grading and reconstruction side, we have 5 different projects throughout the region. They'll cover about 21 miles, and it's about $50 million worth of work. And probably the biggest job we'll have that year is the second half of the Huron reconstruction on Highway 37. And that's a full urban grading job. We'll replace the storm sewer and the pavements and the sidewalks and upgrade any signal systems and lighting. That's about $11 million. Also, over the years, 2023 through 2026, we have a lot of bridge work coming, especially with our local partners. Right now, it's looking like we're going to have 11 state structures that we're going to be totally replacing over those years for a little over $50 million. We're doing 36 structure rehab projects, try to extend the longevity of those bridges for about $14 million. And then on our local systems, we have scheduled 37 new structures for our county partners and 6 structure removals. And that'll tally up to about $32 million. And that number will probably rise with the big grant. Oftentimes we don't see those projects coming for more than 2 years. So when we get into 2025 and 2026, the numbers will probably increase for our local partners. So in total, we're looking at almost 300 miles of new pavements, 120 miles of roadways being reconstructed, 48 structures being replaced, 36 structures being rehabilitated. And then with our maintenance type projects where we're doing chip seals and route seals and replacing striping, we're going to actually touch almost 62.5% of the roadways and improve them in the region. And our total cost is looking at about $580 million. So with that, I will hand it back to Mike and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mark. $500 million. So a lot of projects coming up. So we are to that point of the night where we want to get input from folks and hear from you and your thoughts and your concerns or opportunities for improvement that we have from the department. And getting the comments are important. They're provided to our Transportation Commission, but most importantly, the transportation system isn't DOT's transportation system, it's public. So we want to hear from you, hear what opportunities again we have for improvements across our region or just across the state if you have other ideas as well. We are going to have a microphone up here. The reason for that is that we are recording this again, and we can also know who made the comment. So when you raise your hand for a comment, Steve will bring the microphone over to you. If you would please just introduce yourself, and if you're representing somebody or an agency, just who you represent, and we'll go from there. So who'd like to go first tonight? We did bring up a stack of highway maps, so the first one gets a highway map. If anyone. Julie? Okay. Steve?
Thank you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So, I appreciate it. Officially, on behalf of my wedding, tonight, I want to specifically say thank you for undertaking the project towards which is underway now. I think that was a recommendation made at one of the speakers several years ago. The commission agreed with you on the money. So thank you for that. How we manage transfer funding and how.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the comments, Julie, and appreciate working with you over the years and seeing you every winter in Pier as well. So from a federal funding standpoint, right now, things are sitting in a pretty good position, mainly due to the fact that we had the bill that was passed through Congress here in November. Historically, bills tend to linger, and if they aren't passed within a timely fashion, it really puts a pinch from a department standpoint trying to plan for the future. The reason I say that is it takes time to develop a project, and I do recall the conversations folks had regarding that stretch from Ipswich to Aberdeen when they came in, and it took time, but it's here now and it's going forward. So, generally the development of a project can take anywhere from 3 to 8 years to go from concept to contract. So knowing what those federal funds are going to be into the future is great. So we have the bill in place now. Every year there's an Appropriations Act that we'll see what happens here when the federal fiscal year ends in October. There's a chance that we may not know exactly what the money is going to be until later on in the calendar year. So it'd be great to have an Appropriations Act in place right away. Actually, I'd take one right now so we know what's going on in October, but it'd be nice to know where we're sitting in October. I think we need to be patient with the process, and the process will happen in DC. But we have the framework. So with the framework, we know that we'll be at least at this year's level into next year. So I think we're in a pretty good position from a federal standpoint, knowing what that framework funding is going to be the next 4 years. So overall, I think we're fortunate right now. I know in 3 years, I'll maybe be singing a different tune, but as of right now, we feel fortunate that we have a plan in place. Thank you. I just get a note to repeat the questions for the recording. So Julie, I will do that. Julie Johnson from Minot Lake area mentioned thanks for the work between Ipswich and Aberdeen, and also how are we doing on federal funds and what can we do to help? So thank you. Hopefully I covered that. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom or Facebook?
We have a comment from a person on Facebook, reconstruction needed in Ipswich, from Tanya.
Tanya said reconstruction needed in Ipswich.
Correct.
And I'm trying to think on that one. I think recently in town, there was a reconstruction job, maybe some challenges off to the east there, Mark, or anything? East and west, right at city limits, but east and west. Okay. Thank you, Tanya. Representative Perry.
Thank you very much. We're really happy that you're here. Julie says a lot of the things that are really important. That is that we have a partnership that's really working. And we do want to be a little bit greedy as we visit with you, because we're going out here, which is really wonderful. But for the people who have them over, that'll be another next step. And hopefully you have that on your agenda. I know at one time somebody said that would be at least 5 years out. Well, that was about 2 years ago. So that means it's like 3 years out, maybe, but it could be even 5 years from today. But it's something to think about for safety, for medical. We have 2 great medical facilities in Aberdeen. Plus we have agriculture with the beans and the HEP, and Dakota with beef, and all the other things that we have. We have one of the largest cell barns in the entire state in Aberdeen. So we just need to do more to do more. And I think that would be something really important. One more second.
Definitely.
It might be a whole minute. Mike Weiss is here. He's a Brown County Commissioner, and he's a darn good one. And then off to my right is there were 4 people running for 2 spots. This is not a political ad, it's just a fact. And two people won. One of them is sitting right here, that's Brandy Schellbauer, and myself, and that's in the primary. That means that we're not done yet, but we're working hard, and we're gonna be in here. So if you have questions and you need help, look up Brandy or look up Carl, because we're gonna be there for you.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate it and appreciate the working relationship over the years. Really do. The question again, I'm going to repeat it for the recording just to make sure we get it covered, or comment, if I may say, was the thanks for the work from Ipswich to Aberdeen and continue going west. Go west, young man. Yeah, and thank you for that. I know that the Ipswich to Aberdeen corridor went through some studies and did quite a bit of work on that one. And if my recollection is still good, which I hope it is, we saw a pretty good volume traffic drop once we get out a little bit west of Ipswich. And with the grain terminals, the ethanol plants, there was a lot of truck movements in there too, which really kind of pushed that project forward. But we'll definitely take a look, see where things are at from a volume and a crash standpoint. I'm not going to commit a project in 3 years. I can't commit to a project in any time period here, but we'll definitely take a look at it, see what we're seeing out there on that corridor, and if there's something that we can do just with the amount of traffic going back and forth, Representative. Thank you. Mike?
Mike Lee from County Commissioner. I really don't have so much comment. Thank you. Votes for temporary realignment, things like that. Participate with us, negotiate with us, help us with our roles. Doing that, so keep the dialogue.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the comments, and the comments were thanks for the coordination on projects and detour routes and haul routes to make sure that transportation system works. And I got to say thank you as well for the relationship we got with Brown County, even though we have to work with Dirk every once in a while. I'm joking. For those of you who don't know Dirk, he's kind of a character, but yeah, I won't repeat that part, but no, I know. We do appreciate the working relationship. It's so important to make sure the transportation works. It can't just work on one road, right? So just appreciate the working relationship we have with you and really all the counties throughout the state. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Anything on social? Any other comments, questions? All right. Well, as we're, definitely, Julie, please go.
Julie Johnson again. One quick comment. I noticed a release recently about the big grant, French People Grant Program, and I was privileged to be part of the coalition that helped establish that years ago. I'm forgetting exactly how many, but clearly there's been some embracement of that program because additional needs added by the Department of the Coalition. You may want to comment about that. Brown County got one here.
Definitely. Julie asked with the changes of the bridge improvement grant, is there anything to share with the changes in the bridge improvement grant? Julie was involved early on in that process. So in 2015, a little history lesson for some of us here, there was a bill passed and that increased the fuel tax and excise tax. It also created what's called the bridge improvement grant program. So a lot of the bridges that Mark had talked about earlier are coming from that bridge improvement grant program. So each year there's about $15 million set aside for local government structures. So local governments apply for it if they meet the criteria to be eligible. And then they're selected based upon a scoring criteria. This year, our Transportation Commission increased the $15 million to $33 million. And part of the reason for that is as we receive funds from the Federal Highway Administration, we share proportionally, we have been sharing, our commission has shared proportionally with our local governments. And it's been based upon the percentage of bridge deck area. So you figure out how wide and how how much area that bridge deck is in poor condition. We share that pro ratio back with our local governments. So based upon that, our Transportation Commission increased the Bridge Improvement Grant Program to $33 million. And then just recently, Commission also approved a local federal bridge replacement program as well at $6.75 million. So there's those two things coming together for almost $40 million alone for local government structures here in this fiscal year. So again, a great opportunity for us to help improve some of that infrastructure that's out there. And it's been something that we're very proud of, and it's been great to be able to work with our local partners trying to improve that transportation system. Thank you, Julie. Any other comments, questions?
Emmeline says, love hearing DOT updates.
Okay. Emmeline liked hearing DOT updates. That's great. Be a follower. All right, with that, we're going to close the public testimony. That doesn't mean we're leaving. You can kick us out the door later on, but let's make sure we get a chance to visit afterwards. So if you got questions on particular projects, we got the group up here. We have obviously Brad, Matt, Bruce here. So we have a lot of folks that are here and want to listen and have a conversation about transportation. It's because we love it, but in all honesty, we want to hear what you all think is important. So with that, what was our total number here tonight? Steve? 27 in attendance. So thanks for being here. We'll make sure to share this with our Transportation Commission, and thank you for helping make better lives through better transportation. Have a great night.